Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and let's get right into this video. So today we're back again with Sister Spice. Oh yeah. So this is part 2 of this hand. We are going to be starting on the nail art today, and Sister Spice is going to continue where we left off on our creepy Reddit stories. So let's have a little recap.
So the little recap was our main guy is named Nathan, and they were on their point of no return ship, and they needed to go out because they were short for their quota because they do, I think, commercial fishing. They get, fish and whatnot, and they were short on their quota. So the captain was like, let's go out further to sea. And then everybody was like, okay, as long as there's no storms or bad weather and, we're going to be safe because we're really not supposed to be going that far out with no land. The captain's like, on the radar, it says there's no storms. Lo and behold, they get there, they fish a little bit, huge storm. Hugest storms, flips their ship underneath, ruins a bunch of their mechanical stuff, the engines, their, electronic stuff. And then they also have water coming into the ship and they can't find the hole. So they were pumping out the water. And then, of course, that died when the ship rolled over because of that ginormous wave. And then the radar somehow was still kind of working. And it also picked up another ship nearby. So they put all their efforts into setting sail towards that ship on their last, the last life of that boat. They all climbed up the ship except one of their crewmates didn't make it, Kenny. He slipped off the ladder. They got on that boat and they're like, holy Magonia, this thing is huge. They find a little place to rest for the night inside the ship, and it's like this luxurious, nice area with chairs and whatnot and tables. They all change into dry clothes and go to sleep. Then the next day, they're out exploring. The crew splits into 2 teams. The one trying to get the engine working, one trying to explore the boat to see, what we got on here. And then Nathan is in the group to explore the boat. And basically, he saw someone looking at him through the window. And then he's like, guys, did you see that? Nobody answers him. His team doesn't answer. And he turns around and he's like, all by himself. And so he's like, what the heck? Are they playing a prank on me? And so he tries to radio his captain. He's like, Captain, I'm all alone. Can you help me? Hello? No answer. And then there was static on the radio every time he tried to radio. But this time there was no static. And he heard a voice that said, hello, Nathan. And that's pretty much where we're at. All right. So now continuing where we left off. My eyes shot down to the radio in my hand, my breathing catching in its throat. It felt like someone had just poured a bucket of ice water down my back. That was not the captain's voice. That wasn't any of my crew's voices. For a moment, I debated saying nothing. Then I slowly pressed down on the transmit button. My throat had gone dry as cotton. Hello? I said, my voice coming out gaspy and ragged. For a few seconds, there was no reply, and then came a voice again. A man's voice, deep and low. Welcome aboard to all of you. My heart began to thump hard in my chest, and my breathing quickened. What the actual heck, man? I forced myself to hit the button again, forced my voice to come out much calmer than I felt. Who the heck are you? There was another stretch of silence, in which I began to furiously look over my shoulder, the feeling of paranoia growing by the second. And then my blood turned to ice as a new sound emanated from the radio speaker. The sound of the man beginning to laugh. Another laugh joined the first, this time a woman? I stared at the radio as if it was possessed, as more and more people's laughter began to filter out, sounding as if an entire room of people had just found what I said the most hilarious thing they'd ever heard. Fear began to fill every fiber of my being, a new kind of fear, different than the one I felt in the storm last night. And then it climaxed as a horrifying scream that tore through the speaker. I practically flung the walkie-talkie out of my hand onto the floor, clapping a hand over my mouth. As I backed up into the wall, as soon as the scream finished, the radio went silent. For a few moments I stood there, hand still clasped over my mouth, and stared at the radio like he was about to sprout legs and chase after me. I fought to get my racing heart and shuddering breath under control, the logical part of my mind trying to make sense of things. You're panicking, Nathan. You're just panicking. You're panicking so much that you're beginning to experience auditory hallucinations. When the mind breaks, it conjures up things that aren't there. What you need to do is get outside and get some fresh air. The fresh air will do you good. I took a deep breath and felt myself to begin to calm down. The fear that I'd felt began to melt away like ice in spring, and I shook my head. Yeah, you're supposed to be the calm and rational type, Rogers, I whispered to myself. His last name's Rogers. I let out a soft laugh and took a step towards my dropped radio, but I stopped as I felt footsteps or something that wasn't carpet. I looked down at the floor. There, crushed under my left foot, what appeared to be a folder of some sort. No, not a folder. I crouched down, aiming my light as I picked up the object. There was an artwork on the cover. I could see a violin, a film reel, shuffleboard, and other items decorating the cover. Big blocky letters in the middle of the cover read, "Program for today." And in the bottom right-hand corner was the word Cunard in cursive scrawled. I looked at the cover as I walked over and picked up the radio, clipping it back on my belt. Focusing my attention on it was helping me rapidly calm, and I decided to quickly flip it open to see what it said. There were only 2 pages inside. The top of the left page was adorned with the words "Notice," while the right page was headlining by "Program of Events." My eyes began to slide down, slightly reading it out loud, until my mind caught up with my eyes. Wait, I didn't just see that, did I? I flashed a light back on top of the page, where the date was stamped. Thursday, June 21st, 1956. What? I blinked my eyes a couple of times, slightly praying that the date would change, that I was seeing things. But no, it remained the same. I began to feel my heart pound in my chest again. This makes no sense, man, I said for a moment. My mind flashed back to the comment I seen that morning about the ship having sunk decades ago. I shook my head, trying to stay calm. Just to get the heck outside, Nathan. Take a breath. I turned back into the direction of the smoking room and froze. The program fell out of my hand to the floor. My heart thundered in my chest, and my breathing came in short, ragged gasps. There were figures standing in the hallway, down by the T-junction. I couldn't tell how many, but there were enough that they blocked the way back. In gloom, I couldn't see any features, just dark outlines of them. Remembering the flashlight in my hand, I began to raise it to aim it at them. That's when the light flickered out. I was plunged into gloom as I stared down the light, smacking it and mentally pleading for it to come back to life. But it was no use. The light was dead. Realization suddenly filled me as my mind screamed at me. Then I'd be taking my eyes away from the figures. When I snapped my head up, I almost screamed. They had been drawn closer, packing the hallway from wall to wall. They made no noise, at first. And then I heard the whispering begin. It started quietly, almost to the point I thought I was hearing things, but then it began to grow louder. I couldn't tell what was being said. The voices were so low it was impossible to distinguish individual words. Even so, I felt a new bolt of terror shoot through me at the sound, and then my fear compounded as I saw the figures take a step towards me. I began to violently shake as I slowly began to back away. Then they came for me.
Okay guys, we are rushing right now. We want to go get sushi and it's gonna close soon. So right now I am trying to quickly rub on this chrome and then we're gonna leave. Okay guys, we just got back from our sushi dinner and we're gonna continue now.
The figures were suddenly a blur of motion, moving far faster than any human being could. They steamed towards me, the whispered suddenly intensifying to a fever pitch. Caught off guard, I stumbled backwards, tripping over my own feet and falling to the floor. My right elbow slammed into the wooden panel and I felt a bolt of pain shoot up my arm. The figures swarmed over me. The whispering morphed into laughter. Laughter and screaming. A moment later, more screaming became my screams. I raised my arms over my head, covering my face and curling into a ball, the tears rolling down my face, and I felt at any moment I'd be torn apart. "Nathan!" The shout cut through the silence. I stopped screaming, but kept my arm over my head protectively. Then I felt a hand begin to roughly shake me. The terror returned, and I lashed out. "Get off me!" I screamed. The voice came again, a familiar voice. Hey, easy, bro, easy." The realization made me lower my arms and open my eyes. 3 faces etched with pain and fear looked down at me. For a second, I fought to find my voice. "Andrew? Well, Spence? Relief crossed the face of my crewmates. He's back, Andrew said quietly, wiping visible sweat from his brow. I uncurled myself and sat up, looking around. I was lying on the floor of the smoking room, close to the window. I'd seen the figures outside. Sunlight still streamed in, landing on where I'd collapsed to the floor. I looked up at the others. What the heck happened? I managed to ask. Spencer shook his head, still looking rattled, but Andrew again answered me. Dude, I have no idea. One minute we were talking about going to check out other areas of the ship, then the next you suddenly yell and ran to the window. Then you just started pulling a statue routine. You didn't respond to anything we said. You just stared out the ocean, not moving, not blinking, until you suddenly fell to the floor and began screaming. He let out a shaky breath of his own. You scared the ever-loving heck out of us. I blinked rapidly, my mind trying to make sense of his words. Had I really hallucinated everything? Had it all just been in my head? I stumbled to my feet, aided by Will and Spencer. Andrew just kept looking at me, a concerned look now on his face. I took a deep breath of my own. I'm okay, I said, my voice sounding far calmer and surer than I felt. You sure? Will asked me. I nodded. I must have gotten less sleep last night than I thought. The stress and the sleep must have made me, I don't know, fall asleep standing up or something. I could see the other two relax immediately, taking my words at face value, but Andrew continued to look at me for a moment, seemingly unconvinced. Finally, he nodded. The sound of static stabbed through the air, causing me to almost jump out of my skin. Then the sound of the captain's voice rang out from the radio on my belt. We're in business, boys, I heard him declare happily. A moment later, I felt the floor beneath my feet shudder slightly from what must have been the boilers coming to life. And then the lights came on, all throughout the ship. The smoking room became ablaze with the yellow lights of what had to be incandescent bulbs. Banishing away the gloom that lurked in the corners like monsters in the closet, I began to say something to the others when a new sound began. Music. Music began spilling out from what had to be hidden speakers in the walls or ceilings. It echoed all throughout the deck. I could hear the instruments along with the woman's crooning voice reverberating far down the hallway, and likely all throughout the ship as well. Spencer looked up hard at me. Will suddenly snapped his fingers. I know this song, he exclaimed. My grandmother used to play it all the time when I was a little kid. He began snapping his fingers again, thinking hard. It's by a singer from the 40s and 50s called, I think, Joe Stafford? Now Andrew did take his eyes off me, looking over at him. What's the song name? He asked, mildly interested. Will thought for another moment before answering. You belong to me. As if on cue, the singing voice sang out the 4 words. I couldn't help but shiver slightly at them. I still feeling as if I jumped straight from Kansas to Oz, and then being booted back to reality. I cleared my throat. Hey guys, would you mind not telling the captain about what happened with me? They looked at me for a moment, thinking. Yeah, sure, Nate, Andrew said, as long as you don't ever do that again. Feeling relieved, I nodded. Spencer spoke up. Come on, we should try and meet up with the captain, figure out what to do next. And with that, he walked out of the room. Will followed close after him. Andrew shot me one more look. Sure you're all right? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, I'm fine. I lied. I raised my right arm to rub the back of my neck, and he began to leave the room. But I stopped as a throbbing pain suddenly shot up my arm. I let out a small gasp of pain, bringing my left hand over to feel the back. As soon as my fingers touched my right elbow, another sear of pain rippled out. I turned and looked at where I'd fallen. There was nothing there for me to have slammed my elbow into, and the carpet had been thick and plush, too plush to have hurt myself. The mental image of falling back into the wall suddenly burst forth in my mind, falling as those figures rushed towards me, whispering and laughing and screaming. My eyes slowly rose to look down the now brightly lit hallway. Even from here I could see the sign shadowing the location of the gym. I shuddered. It was just a hallucination, wasn't it? I swallowed hard, forcing the thought from my head, and hurried to catch up with the others. We met the captain and the others back in the lounge we'd spent the night in. They'd found a way to turn the music off, and for that I was thankful. All we heard as we walked through the ship had been songs that sounded like they were from 70 years ago or older. All they did was remind me of the program I'd clutched into my hand, seeing the date on it. We could tell they must have been breaking their backs to get the boilers going. Sweat and black stains covered their faces and clothes. The captain glanced down at his watch. We only have about an hour or so of daylight left, so let's try and make our way to the radio room to see if we could send out a distress call. After that, we'll figure out where to go from there. We all nodded, then hurried after the man as he led the way. The radio room wasn't hard to find at all. Once we'd entered the upper levels of the ship, ones I could tell were meant for crew only, the signs led us right to it. My hopes at being able to get off rose with each step we took. And then we dashed as we reached the closed door to it. The captain reached out and attempted to turn the handle, but it refused to turn. A few of us gathered up next to him and attempted to force it open, but it wouldn't budge a single inch. Damn, it's locked, the captain growled out as he finally gave up. I felt my heart sink. I could see the same expression in everyone's face. But then the captain continued, Okay, that means there's gotta be a set of keys somewhere on board. Then that can get us in there. He rapped on the metal door with his knuckles. So our next job is to find them. They'll likely be in the crew's sleeping quarters, maybe in the captain's cabin. He looked at his watch again. But that'll be a job for tomorrow. We should head back to the lounge, get some food and water into our systems, and get some sleep. We've done a good job today. After finding out a way through the ship, now she has power, it's going to be much easier. I felt equal parts dismay and anxiety as I followed the others back to the lounge, and as much as I tried to ignore it, I still felt watched. The lights didn't help one bit. I kept looking back over my shoulder, afraid I would see the boy I'd seen in the smoking room window again. Or worse, the shadowy figures. Thankful, though, I never did, and we made it uneventfully back to the lounge, where we ate our dinners, packages of MREs that had been part of our emergency supplies, and then began to settle down for the night. I used the solar charger I'd left outside all day to charge the laptop, and as I booted it up, Will came over to me. You truly all right, man? He quietly asked me. I nodded at him, giving him a false smile. He sighed. You know, as much of a messed up situation as we're in, the one good part was hearing that song again. I've never heard it since my grandmother passed away. I looked up at him. You like that kind of music? I asked. He nodded. Honestly, I like everything about the time period. The 1950s, I like the music, the movies, the celebrities, the cars. Between you and me, bro, I like it a lot more than the 21st century. If they invented time travel in my time, I'd go back there in a heartbeat and never come back. He let out a soft laugh, then patted me on the shoulder and walked away to his sleeping bag. I watched him go, and then I looked over at the captain. He gazed around at everyone, then looked over at me, and I stared slightly. I saw something in his eyes that I wasn't used to seeing. Worry, and fear? Did he see something down in the engine room? Just as quickly as it washed away and he nodded at me, I returned the gesture, and he pointed at the laptop in my lap. It was an unspoken question. Are you going to try to send a message out again? I nodded, and he stood up, stretching his arms over his head and yawning before shaking his head slightly, and heading for his own sleeping bag. And now here I am, the only one left awake again. The captain turned out most of the lights in the lounge, something I really did not like, so I moved over to the table that remained upright, one that had a lamp built into the middle of it, and turned it on. I now sit typing this out, but I can't help but look up, my eyes darting around the dark, expansive room. I'm terrified. Every time I take my eyes off the screen, I'll see those figures again, standing in the dark and staring at me. I wish so much that we could jump into one of the lifeboats on the side of the ship, lower it into the sea, and row away for God's sake. But with only about a week and a half worth of food and supplies and no idea where we are, we could end up rowing in the middle of the Atlantic, if we're not already. Like I said at the start, when I first started this day, I felt for sure that you all had been wrong, that just because the ship was named the Queen Elizabeth, it didn't mean it was the same one that caught fire and sank long ago. But after what I saw in the hallway, both the program from the 1956 and those things that I truly don't know whether I hallucinated or not, I'm starting to believe you might be right. As much as my logical mind tries to tell me it's impossible, I think we might have jumped out of the frying pan of our sinking ship and into the literal fire. And honestly, I'm beyond terrified. I had no idea how I'm going to sleep tonight. I think in the morning I'll see about getting myself some kind of weapon. A chair leg, a knife, something. It maybe not do anything against any kind of ghost, but it might make me feel better at least. Please, if you're still there, if you end up reading this, please let me know what we should do tomorrow. Should we try to find the keys to the radio room like the captain suggested, or should we do something else? Is there anything that I might be missing here? Does anyone know more about the Queen Elizabeth? Anything that might give me clues as to why this is happening, or just to direct us to any important places? Anything you can think of that might help. And man, right now, we need all the help we can get. So, the first comment by Jedi Dragon King. It says, geez, that segment with the dark figures really made me imagine what was happening. But anyways, you should find those keys and more supplies, ASAP. Something tells me you guys are going to be there a while. Also, another comment said, please stay in groups. Those spirits will likely pick you off one by one if you go alone, as they probably gave you a cruel tease of Mr. Rogers. Best of luck to you guys. Hope you can make it out there. Oh, and one more thing. Since this ghost ship reminds me of the movie of the same name, if you see a beautiful woman singing that song you heard over the ship's intercom, do not go near her. It's most definitely a trap. I don't want him to get a weapon because I don't want him to hurt the other crew members. You know, like, imagine he's hallucinating, right? And he swings, and then he hurts somebody. Because he's not seeing the real people. He's seeing, like, I don't know if it's a hallucination or if they're, like, taking him in their, I don't know, in their realm. Or this is kind of crazy how the story, like, kind of goes with the comments. It's like, is he making other Reddit accounts to write those comments or what? Because I don't know which one I should be reading. Or another commenter said, what does this ship run on? Diesel? How long does it normally keep for? If it's much less than 70 years, you are definitely on a ghost ship. I tried battering the doors down with something heavy, like a table or maybe a big beam if you can find one. Or see if you can find the security station so you can also access the weapon locker. Maybe you would get lucky and find the captain's room. Did you check the bridge for a navigational log? Oh, and another ghost ship / zombie film you should check out. Movie is called Shockwaves. I'm not here to plug movies or anything, so it was filmed, I believe, in the Florida Keys in the 70s. Starred Peter Cushing and Keith Carradine? I don't know. At the end of his career, the movie had a great vibe. How much fresh water do you have left? You may want to start putting out barrels and pray for rain. I feel like longer comments like that might be like part of the story. Because he was asking a lot of good questions. Another person said, you guys got started off good with the power. Stay in groups. It's definitely a ghost ship and likely wants to add you to their passenger list. Don't leave anyone alone. And then the last comment that I think is important that the OP or narrator might include in the next part. Another person asked if they looked in the ship's kitchen for further supplies for like food and stuff, and then also to move to the chapel if there is one. And then they're like, we don't know the entity's limitations, chapel, I guess, they don't they don't like that. And then they said definitely try to get in the radio room, look for maps, etc., and stay all together. Okay, so we're gonna go to part 3. All right, for the record, this is part 3. The only phase I know how to describe our current situation right now is up Dookie Creek. Is up the Dookie Creek without a paddle. Things have gone from bad to far, far worse since last night. And to tell you the truth, everyone now is scared out of their minds. Well, almost everyone. But I'll get to that in a minute. Before I say anything, let me again say thank you to those of you who commented on my last night's post. Despite everything that has happened today, we managed to make some progress. And I can't help but think it was all thanks to you for giving us some direction. Let me quickly answer a few things that you have brought up. First and foremost, as soon as I opened the laptop and saw the comments, I went and pulled one of the maps off the ship's wall, looking to see if there is indeed any sort of chapel or religious gathering area for us to hold up in. Unfortunately, the Queen Elizabeth seemed to never have built one aboard. So that idea is out. Secondly, the reason why we set up base camp in the lounge is because it was the first place we reached when we came aboard. It's the place we know best. After yesterday, though, and especially with our current predicament, I'm beginning to think moving to 1 or 2 adjoining cabins might be a better idea. Not as much room for anyone or anything to creep up on us. That being said, let me tell you what happened today. We were roused by the captain just after 10 in the morning. "Come on, Nate," he said softly to me, shaking my shoulder. "We've got work to do today." Then he moved away to wake the others. For 1 minute, I simply lay there, staring up at the ornate ceiling high above our heads. The horrible mental image of the shadowy figures had followed me into my nightmares, and I dream of running down the dark and seemingly endless hallway. The figures always just stepped behind me. I shivered slightly as I remembered the voice welcoming me, welcoming all of us aboard. I attempted to force the image out of my head as I pulled myself from the sleeping bag and to my feet. Once everyone was awake, we all quickly had breakfast before I broke out the computer to see what people had said. I quickly scrolled down the comments I saw were there as the others came over. As much as I quickly wanted to tell the others about what I'd seen yesterday, a small part of me whispered that none of them would believe me, especially after what Andrew, Spencer, and Wills said they saw happen to me. If anything similar happens to me or anyone else, I'll tell them. But not until then. Everyone gathered around to read what you all suggested. I could tell to them it was like a lighthouse beacon, guiding us to safety. I couldn't help but feel a small pang of disappointment flow through me as they again dismissed the ghost ship comments. Even though I'd known it was coming, apart from potentially the captain and me, nobody else had seen anything out of the ordinary. I shot a glance his way as he leaned in to read the screen, but any trace of the fear I'd seen last night had whipped away, replaced with his usual calm, calculating expression. "Well, at least people seem to agree with my idea to find the key," he said finally.
Wait, key to what?
The key to the radio room. He said finally, standing back up, seeming somewhat pleased. Wyatt leaned in and pointed at another comment. "Cap, what about this person's suggestion to move from the lounge to some of the cabins to sleep? It'll be way more comfortable than another night on the floor." The captain rubbed his beard, thinking, They may have a point. I wasn't able to get much sleep last night. We'll move our stuff into some of the first-class cabins." "Okay, now we're upgrading."
First class.
Just as the same as yesterday, we paired off into 2 teams. The captain, Andrew, and Spencer would head off to the crew's quarters to try and find the keys, while myself, Wyatt, Will, and Vinny would try to find any food we could to add slowly to our dwindling supplies. I very much didn't want us splitting up again, not after both what you all had said and what I'd experienced, but try as I might to say so to the captain. Like, what? But try as I might to say so to the captain. He remained steadfast. "We need to cover as much ground as possible, Nate," he said after we dumped our stuff into some adjoining cabins near the lounge. And with that, he turned and hustled to the other 2 in his group. I watched them go away, saying a silent prayer for them to be safe before returning to the others. "Well, which way do we go?" Vinny asked, gesturing to the main halls that branched away from us. I looked down and studied the map of the ship for a moment. My eyes drifted past the maze of rooms and lounging areas, before settling on a large area near the stern of the ship. "How about we start here at what looks like a restaurant called the Vanderda?" The 3 men cranked to look at the map. "Sure, why not?" Wyatt said, shrugging his shoulders. With our destination set, we turned and began heading aft. Passing through the lounge, we found ourselves in more hallways that seemed to stretch on forever. "Man, they had a lot of cabins in first class alone," Vinny said as we passed a small sitting area, looking out onto the starboard side of the ship. Then he lowered his voice slightly. "Hey, did any of you have anything, weird happen to you yesterday?" The question caused me to stop dead in my tracks. "What do you mean weird?" I asked. Everyone stopped now. Wyatt let out a soft groan. "Oh, come on, Vin. Nothing weird happened yesterday. The captain said so." But I could tell he wasn't being completely honest. Will's brows furrowed. "What are you guys talking about?" He took a step towards Vinny. "Did something happen to you guys down in the engine room?" Wyatt let out another protest, but Vinny seemed to ignore him. "I don't know, man. All I know is we were down there working like crazy to get the boilers up and running, and when I look over at the captain, he stopped in the middle of giving us directions. I had no idea what to do next." I saw the big man shiver slightly before continuing. He had the creepiest expression on his face. It was like he'd been hypnotized or something. The lights were on, but no one was home. Then he just snapped out of it. He looked absolutely terrified for half a second, then seemed to remember what was happening and kept going. Wyatt cut in. That's because he didn't get much sleep last night. He literally told us that when you asked him what was up. I swear to God, Vinny, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Vinny shot a slightly irritating stare at him before turning back to Will and me. I just need to know, did any of you have anything weird or unusual happen to you guys yesterday? I exchanged glances with Will. His expression was that of a perfect poker face. The look in his eyes betrayed what raced behind them. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I debated whether to come clean with my experience, but Will spoke before I did. No, nothing like that. Nothing besides accidentally tripping over an overturned chair. I felt a wave of surprise shoot through me. The entire time I'd known Will, I'd never known him to deliberately lie. He was someone who always told the truth, even if it ended bad for him. Where on earth did this side come from him? There, see, all is well as it can be, Wyatt said triumphantly. Happy now, Vin? I saw him study our faces for another moment before shrugging. All right, guess it was really nothing. And with that, he turned and began walking down the hall. I spared another glance at Will, but he simply shrugged at me and turned to follow them. I stared after him for a minute, unable to move, until a familiar shiver shot up my spine, one that indicated I was being watched. I swung my head around, looking behind me, back down the hallway. Nobody was there. Nobody I could see, anyways. Feeling another shiver pass through me, I turned and jogged up to catch the others. We found a set of stairs that, according to the sign next to them, led down to the restaurant deck, from where we were on the main deck. Heading down a few flights, we found ourselves yet another landing. Will suddenly let out a small laugh and pointed. Hey guys, check it out! Across the landing from us was what looked like a small booth. Glass and metal bars separated the person who sat inside from everyone outside. Looking up, I saw a sign hanging over the window. Purser's office. This must be where you drop off any paperwork you need to travel aboard, along with valuables you want to lock up in the ship's safe, Wyatt said. He let out a laugh. You think there's anything valuable still in there? Jewelry, cash, stuff like that? I turned to him, feeling a bit astonished. You're joking, right? He shrugged. Hey, we're alone on board here. If we took anything, I don't think anyone would know, he said, grinning slightly. Yeah, until the ship gets brought back to dock and the owners discover their stuff is missing from there, Vinny said in a displeased tone. Now it was Wyatt's turn to give him an irritated look. I said I was just kidding. Jeez. He looked down at the floor. Killjoy, he muttered. For my part, I gave him a long look, then looked over at the purser's office again. I don't think it'd be anyone on land who'd be mad if we stole anything, I thought before anyone else could say anything. The radio let out a squawk. My heart momentarily began to thud in my chest. For a moment I was terrified I'd hear the man's voice again from it. Instead, the elated voice of the captain came in. Nate, we found the keys. They were hidden away in a desk in the captain's cabin. A feeling of relief washed over me, and I pulled the walkie-talkie from my belt and thumbed it as I saw relieved smiles across the others' faces. Terrific, Cap. You want us to head straight up to the radio room? The man spoke again, a sharp burst of static masking his voice. Say again? Now, the man's voice came in clear. Negative, Nathan. We might still need some supplies. We don't know how long it'll take for anyone to reach us, and we're going to be running low on food soon. Go check out the restaurants like you were planning, and then come meet us. Wyatt's face fell at his words, but I saw the other two's nod at me. We'll try to be quick as we can. Over and out. And with that, I clicked off. Come on, guys, this way, I said, pointing to a sign at the start of the left hallway. Verita Grow. This way. The four of us made our way down the hallway. A porthole stood open halfway down it, and as we passed it, the smell of the ocean filtered in. I slowed to take a deep breath of it, letting it invigorate me, and froze. I didn't just see that. I did not just see that. But I knew I had. As we passed the porthole, I shot a glance out, hoping to catch a quick glimpse of the relatively calm waters, and I caught a split-second glimpse of someone walking past it. It had to be too quick to see anything, besides a blur, but it had been enough. I felt the fear of yesterday return. Oh no, not again, man. My heart raced in my chest, and I felt a lump form in my throat. Hey, you all right, Nate? The voice snapped me back, and I looked up to see the others had turned to look back at me. All of them wore confusion expressions on their face. I fought to find my voice for a second, then spoke, trying to sound calm. Yeah, sorry about that, guys, I said. Will cocked his head again, giving me an odd look, but didn't say anything. Refusing the urge to look out the porthole again, I started walking, pushing past them to begin leading the way. Come on, let's go get this over with for a moment. I heard nothing behind me, and then I heard the others follow. Holy heck, Wyatt breathed out. That's wow. We stood at the entrance to the restaurant next to a small sign that read, "Please wait to be seated." For my part, I couldn't blame him for such a reaction. Even after what had just happened, I couldn't help but feel in awe. The expansive room in front of us, like the rest of the ship. Wooden paneling covering the walls. The only difference was that in here, squares and tiles of aquamarine had been indented into them. Some had ornate shapes, and across the room I saw a massive painting or stitching of what appeared to be a woman clad in Greek or Roman clothing. Below her, 4 horses reared up as if to charge, while several men seemed to hold everything up in midair. Tables were expensive looking. The tablecloths littered the room, the sea green upholstered chairs around them, almost inviting people to come in and sit. Shooting a glance to my right, I saw a huge grand piano set against the far wall and a huge aquamarine curtain covering what must be the window to the stern deck. I don't even want to imagine what it might cost to eat here, Vinny said, causing everyone to laugh softly. You're not joking, I replied, then pointed across the room at the metal swing door. Look, there's the door to the kitchen. Winding our way through the seas of tables and chairs, we reached the door and stopped in front of it. I turned back to the others. All right, cross your fingers, we'll find something, guys. Taking a deep breath, I put my hands to the metal and pushed. We found ourselves in a huge industrial kitchen. Pots and pans of all kinds hung from hooks on the ceilings, and multiple stoves stretched away on the far wall. Fanning out, we began to explore the room, opening cabinets and drawers. Got what looks like flour here, Vinny called, holding up a large white bag. Well, that's something at least. Continuing on, we pulled more than a few ingredients, but nothing we could immediately eat. It got worse when we opened up a giant fridge and saw nothing but items like butter and milk inside. Dang it, Wyatt suddenly yelled, slamming the fridge closed with a slam. He leaned back against the door, leaning his head back. Vinny spoke softly. Look, man, if we were at the port when the storm ripped her away, it stands to reason there might not have been much in the restaurants. We still have the holds and the meat lockers to go through. At least we found some things. Wyatt's eyes snapped open, and he glared at the man. Oh yeah? That's always just like you, Vin. You always go and try to cheer people up, when you're not talking crap about things that have no merit. I realized the situation must have been eating heavily at him, and it was finally bursting out. Vinny narrowed his eyes and took a step towards him, clenching his fist. Hey, F you, man. At least I'm not the dummy who thinks about robbing a ship when we should be searching for food. Oh yeah, that was Wyatt who said, let's rob this place. Oh, God. The two of them began to shout at each other, their voices filling up the room and bouncing off the metal walls. I shot a glance at Will, who wore a helpless expression on his face. Finally, it got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. Shut up, both of you! I screamed at the top of my lungs, feeling my own anger flare up at their petty squabbling. I stood there, breathing in deeply as the two went dead silent, turning to look at me with slightly astonished looks on their face. I'm not someone who yells often. Usually I'm quiet and calm. When I yell, people take notice. For a few moments, there was nothing but silence in the kitchen as we all stared at each other. Looking for shame and guilt felt over Wyatt and Vinny's face, and I saw them open their mouths to speak, likely to apologize, but whatever words they might have said died away as a sound suddenly sprang up behind us, back through the metal door. The sound of a piano beginning to play. That wasn't the sound that caused all of our faces to go pale, though. That made the blood in my veins turn to ice and a gasp to escape my lips. No, that was because along with the piano came the sounds of people talking and laughing softly. Occasionally, the sound of cutlery or glasses being picked up and put down, punctuated in between. My breath began to come in short and ragged gasps as I slowly turned to look out the swinging door. Vinny was the one who spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. The heck? I turned back to look at him. His mouth hung wide open, his lower lips trembling slightly. The sight frightened me more than the sound emanating from back the way we'd come. Vinny isn't someone who spooks easily, after all. Then again, this isn't exactly your normal level of creepy stuff. The sound continued. I heard what sounded like a woman to let out a particularly loud laugh. Wyatt spoke up. What do we do? He asked. The unspoken answer was one I'd been trying to avoid in my head. Aside from the door, there was no other way out of the kitchen. I forced myself to take a step towards the door. Nate, what the heck are you doing? Vinny hissed at me, but I ignored him, taking another step forward. With each step I took, the feeling of terror I had from yesterday returned, rearing its ugly head to begin tearing apart my insides. I pictured dozens of shadowy figures waiting just on the other side of the door for us, waiting for us to step out so they could rush us. But it was either sit in the kitchen until the sound went away, if they go away, or open the door and peek out. By the time I stood next to the door, my heart felt like I was just finished running and sweat rolled down my face. Please, don't let it happen again. Don't let it be there.
You're gonna stop there? Oh, I'm in the middle of cleaning this. Wait, what was the cliffhanger?
He's about to walk to the door because they heard, people talking and stuff. Like it sounds like there's a busy restaurant.
Yeah.
And he starts walking to the door and then he's about to open it. And then he's like, please don't let them be there. And that's it.
Okay, everyone, let's add on some cuticle oil and finish these nails. Okay, everyone, here's how the nails turned out. Let us know what you guys think of this nail set in the comments. So, obviously, the vibe that Sister Spice wanted was vampy, goth, grunge, all those vibes. This nail set design was so good and it was actually so doable. The nail art was not too stressful. So, let's go ahead and do a nail tour. So, first off, we got the spiral star, which is a lot easier actually than it looks. Once you have the initial star shape, then you're good to go. Next, we have the silver with pink aura and a star charm middle nail. It was honestly a trust the process because when it had the matte on it and we were doing the aura, it kind of looks scary, but it's actually not bad at all. Next nail, it's supposed to actually be the charms of this, but we don't have any, so we drew them. And it looks just as good. So yeah, this is a very cool nail. And then on the pinky nail, it's a full chrome with the red nail art and some more silver beads. Then finally for the thumb, plain red with some silver sparkle stickers and a charm. Is that not good?
Peace out, motherfuckers.
Shoo! Okay guys, but that is it for this hand, which we did in 2 parts. So in the next videos, we're going to be doing her other hand, which is going to be other 2 parts again, and we'll be continuing the Reddit story. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!